I'm sure by now you've all experienced the painful fight where you just go on someone and it doesn't work out and your entire team gets wiped, such as what's happening in this Paradox clip. Generally, the reason that fights go so poorly is because people fail to understand their role in the fight. And so in this video, we're going to aim to cover what your role is in the fight, how to identify that, and then how to apply that in fights, all with examples from my own games. Let's get started. The first step to understanding your role in fight is understanding your hero's role in general, right? So here we show this little graph where I've categorized the heroes in different roles. Now, this is by no means an exclusive, chart that determines all the roles possible, because in a game like Deadlock, there are many roles and many heroes that fill multiple roles. For example, I've put Yamato in Brawlers, but you could also put Yamato in Initiator because she can start fights, but at the same time, she doesn't really generate picks. Similarly, Mo and Krill could also be in Brawlers because he's a frontline hero that can get in there, but he's also an Initiator because he can start picks, so on and so forth, right? This is just a general guideline to kind of get you an idea of, hey, how do these heroes generally work and what are their roles, very broadly speaking. In order to better understand a hero's role, let's take a look at Yamato specifically. So Yamato specifically has two identities. She is both a brawler and, in my opinion, an anti-carry hero. Now, the brawler aspect comes from all of her abilities, right? So all of her abilities are close range. So you can look at Crimson Slash, Grapple, Power Slash, and all of these abilities, and their range is all fairly short without upgrades. What that means is that the hero naturally wants to fight close range. Now, if you want to look further than that, her ultimate also gives her a bunch of survivability. It gives her resistance, it cleanses all debuffs, etc., which makes her an ideal brawler because she can get in there, tank a bunch of stuff, use her ultimate, tank even more stuff. However, the anti-carry part of her kit comes from Power Slash and Crimson Slash specifically. Crimson Slash first upgrade gives you bullet resist while channeling, Power Slash first upgrade, and then Crimson Slash first upgrade gives you fire rate slow from 20 to 50%. This makes her particularly good at dealing with the backline damage type heroes, as we saw in the previous graph, heroes like Wraith, heroes like Infernus, etc. So, generally, when you're playing Yamato, those are the heroes you're going to want to focus. Let's take a look at a short example. So, as Yamato, let's say I have three heroes in front of me. There's Shiv, there's Abrams, and there's Infernus. I could choose to go on any of these heroes, and since I'm a brawler, maybe I would want to go on the first hero in front of me, right? For example, the Shiv here, because I see him, he's close, I can use all of my abilities on him, and it's just natural. You see someone, you want to press your buttons, and a lot of players do this. So I could go on either the Shiv or the Abrams that are both in front of me, and it would be very easy. However, that is not the correct thing to do, because your hero is not that good at dealing with these heroes. So you need to identify, hey, out of Shiv, Abrams, and Infernus is the one I want to go on. And so in an ideal world, you want to ignore these other heroes, go straight on Infernus, and then use all of your abilities on him in order to try to take him out. While you do this, you may get shot by other things, but the thing about Yamato is that she's a tunnel vision hero. She's very good at using all of her abilities on one hero. We can take this example further and go with Wraith. Wraith is a backline damage hero who can just sit there and deal damage continuously. Unlike Yamato, she's not a burst hero, and she doesn't need to focus on one specific target. In this situation, you probably don't want to shoot at the Infernus. Instead, you want to deal as much damage to the Shiv and Abrams, as well as kiting them back if they're going on you. Your goal in this fight is just to keep dishing out damage for as long as possible to the targets that are in front of you. Not necessarily to kill the specific Infernus or even a specific target. You are a backline damage dealer. Your goal is to deal damage for the entirety of the fight. Whoever is in front of you, whoever you can deal damage to easiest, and also Shiv and Abrams are going to try to prevent you from doing damage, so you need to deal with them first. In a third example, we have heroes like Lash that are more counter initiators. Lash benefit when there's a fight that's already happening. For example, hey, I've got an ally Shiv distracting them. Then I'm going to go in and look for my ult while they're all distracted by the Shiv. Lash, contrary to popular belief, does not actually like to be the first hero in. He likes to be more the second or third hero. Now that we've talked about the different possible roles with some examples, let's get into actual fights and analyze how they play out. First, let's start with the Yamato example. I initiate the fight using the tech on the rope and then power slashing off of it, and then immediately I identify their damage dealer, which is McGinnis, and then I grapple on top of her. I eliminate McGinnis, and we're already quite ahead in this game, so we win the fight pretty easily. But my role is just to deal, hey, who is their damage dealer? So I look at their souls. McGinnis has the highest souls, and therefore I'm going to focus her. Infernus would have been a great other target if it came to that. But in this situation, it didn't really matter. Now let's take a look at a much longer fight as Lash. So we're going to take a look at how I'm going to navigate this fight and talk about kind of how Lash wants to navigate fights, and this can help you with other heroes. Generally, Lash is an in and out type of hero, and so as you can see throughout this fight, I'm not going to go full committal most of the time. I'm always keeping some stamina in the bank and some resources in order to be able to disengage. 7 pops his ult, I hide underneath the bridge, and then I try to just keep the fight going, and I use my resources. As you can see, in between abilities, I'm going to hide. Now my Moan Curl grabs the Kelvin, but then I'm just hiding, waiting for my next cycle of abilities, which is going to be Flog and Slam, and then I go in every time I have it. And when I don't have it, I look to reset. So I'm going to back up again, and then just keep using Flog and Slam off cooldown, right? So I have it off cooldown, look for an opportunity, get it off, and then I'm going to keep backing because I no longer have Flog. And I see they're chasing Moan Krill, and I'm thinking, hey, I can probably get another Flog and Slam in. And throughout this whole fight, I'm getting a ton of poke damage, and I just kind of keep going in whenever my abilities are off cooldown. But I'm not like full committing, you know, tunnel visioning anyone. I'm just kind of getting the poke damage in. In this situation, this is not the type of fight in which I was able to set up for an ult, but this is the type of fight that happens pretty commonly as Lash, and this is the playstyle you want to try to emulate on these heroes. Pocket can have a very, very similar playstyle when you want to go in when you have, you know, Cloak and Suitcase, and not go in when you don't have your cooldowns. Now, let's take a look at a Paradox example. So Paradox is an initiator slash pick, but you don't want to initiate on anyone. Usually you want to initiate on people that you can actually kill. So in this fight around the urn, I see Abrams in front of me, but I'm not going to use my ultimate on him because he's not actually the target I want. Instead, I want this Infernus. So the moment he runs away, I use swap in the Infernus because he's one of their damage dealers and I want to take him out. Wraith or Haze would have been excellent targets as well. Usually, you want to swap people that you can kill, not just swap anyone in general. Looking at another Paradox example, I zip into this fight and then I immediately notice Wraith has been caught. However, they might not have the damage to clean her up. So I hit for the swap. Now there's a little bit of a glitch that happens and I'm not really sure where she goes, but the idea is the same. However, now that I've used swap, right, I no longer have that resource. So I'm just going to shoot the Abrams, walk hiding back, and essentially try to create space for my team that way. However, my team is losing the fight really badly. Now these things happen. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do about that in this situation. But the moment I use swap, I change my playstyle to be that of an annoying hero that is just going to kite backwards and create issues for the enemy team. It's important to understand that whether you have ult or whether you have certain abilities, your hero's playstyle can change in a fight, and you should think about that. If we take another hero, like Geist, now Geist is a hero that is more of a frontliner that can basically tank a lot of damage and do a lot of stuff. So in this example, we're sieging the base, we down the patron, and then afterwards, I'm on the high ground, my Abrams gets gone on, but as you can see this whole example, I'm going to stay in the front line, essentially stay in a place where the enemies kind of have to go through me if they want to do damage to my team. This is a very, very important example because when you're playing Geist, you don't want to sit too far back because you have swap and you have a decent amount of health and your mobility is quite low. So you want to make sure that you're kind of in the front line, ready to take damage for your team and ready to just create space. Now here, I've got an example in this Geist clip of what not to do. As you can see, they're sieging our base. We're down 2 people, but we're desperate to get kills because we're down 30k. So I go out and I go on this Infernus, which my Yamato is already on. However, as a hero with no mobility, now that I'm on the backline, I'm completely stuck there and isolated, and I just go down immediately. Now, I should have just played the front line and not committed to this kill. If we watch it back, we can see that there's plenty of targets on the left side on the minimap that are available to fight, and that I would have been much better off fighting those and buying times for my teammate to come back because my Yamato was totally fine as she has ult and she can dive that deep. So overall, that was me not playing up to my hero's role. Now in this other fight example, we're up 12,000 and we're going for the urn. And I know that in this situation, the biggest threat is Dynamo. So, as I go forward here, I see the Dynamo isolated, I know he has Black Hole, and so therefore we're going to try to focus him down and kill him before he can use his Black Hole. Now the moment Dynamo goes down, this fight essentially starts to look really good for us, and I'm going to use my body and just put myself in front of the enemy damage dealers and try to make it so that they can't deal that much damage, right? So I'm just standing in front of them and just making sure that, hey, this Infernus can't do whatever he wants. Now, I get juked a little bit here. You know, we're not going to talk too much about that, the little juke on the Infernus. I end up, you know, eventually he goes down, not thanks to me. But regardless, that's kind of the idea. I get to pick on the person that matters. Then I put my body in front. I have swap. I have life drain. I'm very tanky. And so I'm using, you know, playing around my character and my item build. Now, the last thing I want to go over is playing around your itemization. So there are different ways to build different heroes. And for example, you may choose to build some more offensive items. You may choose to build burst fire. You might choose to build toxic bullets. You might choose to build Tesla bullets. You might choose to build berserker. You may want to go crippling, glass cannon, etc. Each of these items should affect and impact the way that you play these fights, if only slightly. For example, you're buying toxic bullets. That's a bit of an anti-tank and anti-healing reduction item. So you want to shoot people that are tanky and that are going to heal, right? It might seem simple, but if you're playing against Warden and you have toxic bullets, you should really shoot him before he ults or during his ult to apply toxic bullets and reduce his healing. Similarly, if Tesla bullets is one of your first item, what is it really good at? It's really good at farming. So you should farm at least a decent amount. Now, if you're building glass cannon, you're going to do a lot of damage, but you're going to be a little bit squishier. So you need to play a little further back and shoot whoever you can and make sure that you're kiting them, right? Similarly, if you're using Colossus, you want to be tanky and get in there, so you need to make sure that you create space for your team and use Colossus in appropriate times to tank as much damage as possible. Now, there's all sorts of item decisions that you can make throughout the game that can impact the way that you're going to maneuver your character and the way that you're going to play in general. So I strongly advise you to consider these before you move forward in the game. Ask yourself, does this item impact the way that I want to play the game? Does this item change anything about what I can do or what my hero can do, right? We talked about power spikes in the previous video. I would highly recommend you guys check that out. But power spikes do different things. You might have certain items that give you spikes for farming, certain items that allow you to dive the enemy backline more easily, certain items that allow you to win 1v1s that you couldn't previously. One of the easiest examples of this is Counterspell. If you buy Counterspell and you're playing against Wraith, let's say you're Infernus versus Wraith, in the past it may be difficult to win that 1v1 because Wraith's going to ult you. However, if you have Counterspell, you can run at her, bait her ult, Counterspell it, and then win the 1v1, right? That's just one example out of many that can drastically change 1v1s. Another one would be if you have Warpstone. Let's say you have Warpstone and you're playing against Yamato. If you hold your Warpstone until the very end of her power slash, you can usually dodge it. Now that can swing the 1v1 very, very significantly. Or what if you buy Fury Trance? Now you have an item that gives you 40% spirit resist and fire rate, which allows you to man up on heroes that do a lot of spirit damage to you. There's over 150 items in the game, and all of them impact fights in many, many different ways that I will never be able to cover in a video. But I want to highly encourage you to think about these interactions and think, what does this item give me that I did not have before? Or what does this item allow me to do against the enemy heroes that I could not do before? With that being said, that's all for today. Let me know your thoughts on the video and the editing as always, and I wish you a good day.